In Denmark, school isn't just school. It's a reflection of values, language, and where you think your kid belongs. So how do you choose between the Danish public school system or an international school? Well, our friend Ilana Bull is back this week, and I am joined by not just a real mom and a cool mom, but our friend Brooke Black.
Hi. These signs are not cool, by the way.
And as mentioned, of course, Ilana Bull, welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome
Happy
back.
to be here.
And we are excited for your expertise today. But for anybody who maybe missed the first episode with you or doesn't know you from social media and all of your presence online, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got here?
Yeah, so I'm from the U.S. and I moved to Denmark in 2018 because I have a Danish husband. We got into all that on the last episode that I was on. And luckily, I was able to get a job teaching at an international school here. I say luckily because I was a teacher in the U.S., so I felt very lucky that I was able to basically do the same job in Denmark that I was doing in the U.S. So I've been teaching primary school at an international school for 6 years here in Denmark. And yeah.
Great. Well, lucky for us that you've done that because we need your help.
Yeah, we need your expertise. Can you tell us a little bit about the international school that you work for and how it's different from what Danish students experience?
Yeah, so the Danish system is very special. And I do mean that I think there are a lot of great things about the Danish system, but it's very unique. Yeah. Where I teach at an international school, we use the International Baccalaureate program, which is used at international schools and secular and non-international schools all over the world. But it is a very student-centered, student-led, inquiry-based approach to teaching. But functionally, our school is also very similar to U.S. schools in some ways.
Can you just rewind for a second? What's inquiry-based?
Sorry.
Oh, right. Yeah. For the non-teachers. People.
Inquiry-based approach to teaching.
I'm just here to talk shop.
Yeah.
No, so that means that we try to encourage students to ask questions and kind of lead their own learning. Of course, it's guided and we kind of have somewhere that we want them to get, but we try to get them interested in the topic. And try to have them kind of lead their learning as much as possible.
And is that not, I guess the other opposite of that would be you're talking at somebody and this is what,
Right, yeah.
Interesting.
So,
I just thought there would always be a given that you're supposed to ask questions.
It's definitely best practice, and that's why I really like the IB, the International Baccalaureate system, because I think so much of it is just good teaching. But yeah, I mean, one big difference between our international school and a typical Danish school is for example, we mix up the classes every year.
Oh, right.
Danes, I think, stay with their same kind of homeroom class all through school, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in the U.S., we mix classes every year, and we also do that at my
Throughout the
international
day.
school here. But yeah, your homeroom class, you get a new class every year. So every year you go to school, it's ooh, who's going to be in your class this year? And yeah.
That's so interesting because I sometimes think that can maybe give you some clues into the way that friendship is approached in Denmark versus the U.S. because you're really building. Danes always say yes, but we go deep with friendship, and that's why. And part of that is because they're not changing. They're not getting those new classmates every year.
But I guess I don't get it because I'm new to having a child in the public school system, in Danish public school system, and they have the same big group, but they switch their little groups all the time.
What are the little groups?
I guess at this stage it's play group, or it's the group they sit in the classroom.
Okay.
So I mean, I feel like there is a change a bit, but maybe it's I guess how do you change an entire
you have at my school it's 2 classes
so
per grade
more
level.
People because I feel like there's 1 million kids at this public school. There's 800 kids. And
So when I taught in the U.S., we would have 4 classes per grade level, so basically 100 kids. And so at the end of every school year, we would get all the kids, all the names of the kids, and we would kind of rebalance the classes by looking at what are our kids that need a lot of help behaviorally, what are the kids that need a lot of help academically, who have IEPs, which are individualized education programs, who speaks English as a second language, needs language support. We need to have the same number roughly of boys and girls in each class.
Okay.
And so, because often when you get to the end of a school year, you'll find that some of the dynamics in the class are maybe not the best. And so it's just kind of a chance to hopefully make each class kind of balanced.
Yeah.
So you don't have one class that's a lot of really difficult behaviors in one class that's just like la la la.
I feel like that's why they switch up playgroup for like the
I love
school.
the playgroups. That's something
It's
that
like
I think
super
is
random.
very Danish, and I've never seen in the U.S.
What is that? Because I do not know.
Yeah, you know what?
as
It's a
the,
good point. I didn't think about it, and it's like because it's such a traumatizing thing for me, like trying to speak to all these kids in Danish. Like so we hosted the one, so you get basically an assortment because your kid might have their favorite friends and things.
Sure.
But this is truly a random assortment of kids that then they switch like halfway through the year.
It's an assigned playgroup. It's like you will have a play date outside of school with these kids.
Yes, thank you for explaining that better than me. And so we hosted the first one that I had ever had in our house, and I'm thinking like, oh my God, our house is going to get destroyed. And so I'm like just throwing snacks at these kids, like because I understand that language, but then when they go off script, like one of them ate too much fruit and his stomach hurt. He wanted to go home, and I'm like, I need my Danish husband for this one. Like, come in here and help me, please. But it is interesting that like it's different dynamics, and you're usually at your house or you're at a park, and so you're with all these like random kids, and the parents aren't with you.
No.
So it's like you're just and so that also makes me wonder like. How much can I parent here? Because like they're not my kid, and I don't know their parents at all. So like, would it be And my husband is maybe a little more like confident because he's Danish and like he can speak to these kids and like if they're making a mess or something like. He can be a bit more direct with them, and I'm just like, okay, is everybody having a good time? Like, here's your plums.
You guys need anything?
Yeah. So it's, but I mean, the theory is that they do become, even if they break into their groups, they don't click as much.
And I actually do. Our school actually has kind of adopted that from the Danish schools because another thing about the international school is besides that we mix up the classes, of course, we have kids coming and going every year.
Sure.
So every year there are kids that are new to the school that maybe their English is limited and they might have a hard time. So doing these kind of play groups, it gives them a way to make new friends that like it takes the pressure off of them. If we say, everybody is doing these play groups and like you don't have to ask this person, do you want to have a play date? You're just going to do it. And the parents have been actually most of the parents are very on board with this. They think it's a really nice idea. And it's also great for like social behaviors because it gives the kids a chance to kind of, if they have a conflict, they're in a much smaller environment than a class where there's 20 kids and one teacher. Maybe there's 4 kids and one adult. So if there's like a conflict, they can kind of work it out on like with a little more attention. So I think that it's really helpful for just positive social relationships.
Do you also have quarterly birthdays where whoever had their birthday in the quarter, like you have like a joint birthday? It's not like everybody is
depends
like,
on the class. Actually, I
think it depends on the parents as well. Like they decide at the top of the year. Like,
okay. A lot of our classes
this is
do
how we'll do
monthly
birthdays.
Yeah. And I do like the monthly birthdays because every time we do a birthday, it's chaos, especially in like the lower grades.
So much sugar too.
Yeah.
I'm like pretty like this is like kind of random, but they had like it was called 10 Fest, like tooth party. For celebrating all the kids that had lost their teeth. So it was something like
adorable.
It was like 300 teeth had been lost in the class.
Wow.
And so everyone made like cut out like construction paper teeth and like toothbrush, toothpaste, and I thought it was so cute.
Adorable.
But then all they did was eat like cake all day. They're like, we're not doing our math or anything like that. We're just having a party for the teeth. And I'm like, but you're eating sugar. So I was wondering if did other schools do this or was this just like mine? And
I have not heard of a tooth fest
party,
at my school.
But if you do like bring Colgate, bring some toothpaste.
Floss.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Make it like
I might
partner
introduce
with the dentist and like make it like you get a balloon or a toy, not a piece of cake.
You get some like affiliates from the dentist because you're really just creating new patients.
It's a great idea. Mm-hmm. So another major difference between the international school where I work and the Danish schools, and I think at the Danish schools, the teachers really only teach like 1 or maybe 2 subjects. Okay. So what I hear is the kids stay in their class and the teachers rotate around by subject, even starting in lower primary school. Whereas our school functions much more like a typical American primary school where the homeroom teacher teaches English, reading, writing, math, science, social studies, and they only go to other classes for a few things. Whereas I think in Denmark, it's a little more the teachers are a little more specialized, I guess.
I feel that I may not actually know what the hell is going on at my kid's school because, like, and this is a wake up call for me, and I need to check with my husband
because I'm looking to Brooke for confirmation that I'm right.
Well, no, but because to me, the two teachers that are in their classroom, like, they're the same. Like, they don't like rotate. They have like different parts of the school they do for like music or for gym or things like that.
Well, maybe
but
I'm
it's
wrong
not
then.
like their homeroom is like the two teachers that I've ever known.
Okay.
So it's like, and they're there from like
But they have 2
eight to
teachers
1.
in
Yeah,
homeroom, so
two
that's...
two men, by the way, which I've like.
I love it.
Yeah, my kids have had like mostly male teachers since they were in Bogstue, like
amazing.
which I love in Denmark. Like it's
Love that
just,
too.
I mean, this like, and there's also like a new person. You've done stuff on staffed playgrounds.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a new person at the one by my house,
Uh-huh.
and like he's already like my kid went up to him, gave him a hug. He knows her like name.
So
He helped
cute.
her with like getting on stilts. There's like
They're awesome.
all of these male
Playground staff.
like
Yeah.
teachers and presences that are safe spaces
Yeah.
for kids. And I just
So
anyway
good.
like
So
anyway.
positive.
But so yes, the subject thing. I don't know. I should know this.
Okay,
I
great.
should have
We'll
studied my
just-
own like kid in Danish school before.
Maybe our listeners can confirm if
Yeah,
we're right.
yeah, please. Like, because I mean, as far as I know, there's the two, and then they rotate around. But also, like, I don't know. I'm curious to know when you walk into an international school here, can you also not find your kid because there's no one at the front desk?
I would
Because
say in the after school program, that is pretty much how it is. They
Okay.
have like walkie talkies, but
no, we don't have any of that.
Yeah, so
it's
they'll be like, this child is here to be picked up, and then another school staff will be like, okay, they're in this room over here, and they'll send them out. But if they're out on the playground, there's no telling.
I can never find my child, and like kids are like, you know, there was one time I almost had like a breakdown just trying to find my kid to take them to the dentist, which is in the school building in another part of the school building, and then take them back. But like,
Nowhere
you know,
to be
the
found.
backpack was locked in a classroom. There was it was right when everybody was coming out for like recess or whatever, and I just was like having a meltdown. I'm like, I cannot find my kid. I'm in the middle of the workday. I'm just trying to take them to the dentist.
Help
Like,
the foreign parent.
and it's really wild because there is no like security. Like, and there was a BuzzFeed article that came out a few months ago that was like things from school in the 80s that would never fly today, and it was all things that still happen in Denmark,
God, yeah.
which are like, you know, using real knives and no one like being at the front of the school. So like, and I appreciate that, but you do have to let go like a bit of trust,
Yes.
where you're like anyone
Absolutely.
could just walk in. There's no like
Absolutely.
walls. There's no like there's no like fence you have to get into.
Yep.
So I mean, good luck finding your kid anyway. But so
I think these are like big differences that we notice, of course, like as coming from the U.S. to here, because obviously school security is very different in the U.S., as you sort of like alluded to, but also just in general, it's tough navigating a school system that you didn't grow up in.
Yes.
And even an international school may be different unless your parents were
and what is
expats and
specific
moved
to
around.
that school versus what is a cultural thing, you know, so like that makes it very difficult to navigate too if something goes wrong. You're like, is this okay? Like this kind of, you know, like roughhousing with like some of the teachers and like, you know, something could be friendly, but there's so many things in the US that would not fly, like no touching, no nothing, you know, and there's like a lot of hugs and all these things that you have to like, that is wonderful, but can also be like, is this like normal?
Yeah.
Is this,
It's interesting too because of course my colleagues are from all over the world. So I do have a lot of American colleagues, but I also have colleagues from many other countries, and so we're all bringing kind of professional experience from other places, and so there are also cultural differences there
and
too.
nuances for like like physical space or you know things like that.
Exactly.
Wow, yeah.
Different
Whereas in the U.S. we're like
responses.
lawsuit, like, and, like people from other countries hopefully are not so concerned about those things.
We had quite a few questions. Back in June, we did an episode with Brooke Fossey, so nearly Danish dame.
Love her.
Yeah, fantastic. And she talked a little bit about her kids and like, I think we asked her what she would do differently. And she mentioned sort of the school tracks. And then we got a lot of questions about that. So I'll play a little bit of a clip that from her time here with us and that sparked some of these questions. And then maybe you can kind of chime in. I'm curious both of your reactions about the two different tracks.
I wish we jumped right into Danish schools. Like when we got here, we were on vacation and we were in an Airbnb and we didn't know where we were going to live. And it's so hard to find an apartment, all this stuff. So we got them into a very small international school and it was super sweet and like a warm, welcoming place. But friends are always coming and going. And eventually we were kind of like, okay, we're starting year 3. We need to put down roots if we're going to stay here, especially for the kids because Danes keep their friends all the way through life, right?
For
So I'm
sure.
like, even if I am not going to be integrated, you have a chance.
Yeah.
So we made this decision to switch schools, and to do that, they had to go to like an intermediate school. And I think it would have just been easier if they just jumped right in.
Yeah, I can relate to the part about we had to make the decision whether or not we would send our kids to international school or Danish school. And one of the downsides of international school for us was the like people moving in and out all the time. And I mean, maybe I'm projecting my own difficulties with like making friends here and like later on in life when you like have a specific more criteria that you're like, looking for. And if you make international friends, they may leave, you know, and like you're already going through so much change and you just want some stability. And I didn't want that for my kids either. And also the Danish school is like their neighborhood kids. So they run into them on the way home, like all the time. It just feels like this village. So, so I appreciate that. Like, and also I was worried about their English because I'm the only one speaking English to them and they don't take English until later on. But it's like my daughter is like reading. She just got into reading. She's 7. And I was also worried about like them reading later in Denmark because I'm like, oh, like what if they're behind? And like my British friend's kid has been reading since she was like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, I just need to wait it out. And she's just like cannot put down like English and Danish books. And so like all those things that where I was like kind of worried about, you know, just being around Danish like didn't happen, you know. So I'm grateful that also because I'm married to a Dane and we know we're staying for a while. Because we moved like 5 different times when we first came here. And I'm like, I just want to stay for a while where we are in this community near the neighborhood or at school. But yeah, it's really interesting everyone has their own approach to it and also can roll with a lot of the people that do move every couple of years. Like they're good at rolling with it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I'm impressed with them. I can't do it personally and maybe you get used to it, but like I need roots.
Yeah, I really agree that I love the vibe of the neighborhood school because my son's Brunnehill is so close to where we live and we run into his friends and even his teachers like all the time and it's so cozy is the word that comes to mind. But this is a question that I got a lot on social media is should I put my kid into Danish school or an international school? And the two things that I would always point to are how long do you think you're going to stay?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
if you're long-term in Denmark, you want the Danish system, I think for sure. Because it is so unique, as I mentioned before. And I think that if you're looking to like universities or employment in Denmark, they really value the Danish education. And the Danish skills. Because if you're in an international school, the language of instruction is most likely going to be English. And they'll probably go to Danish classes, but it's not going to be enough to like become fluent like at all, really.
Yeah.
Like, so I would say, how long are you staying? And then how old are your kids? The younger they are, the more I would say get them in the Danish school.
Yeah.
Because I think the prime language learning age is like 5 to 7. So if the kid's like under 7, for sure, put them in Danish school. They'll learn. They'll pick it up. Exactly.
And then they can tell you what's up. They'll be like, where do I need to go? Like, okay, here's where I go. Wonderful.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say older than 7 to necessarily put them in international school, but like it's going to be the older they get, the harder it is. So it's just like something to consider.
You also mentioned how long they're going to be here and that some of the academic, like some of the rigor, like the learning to read, for example, happens maybe a little bit later. Yeah. Is there perhaps is there like a doom circle where like maybe if they're like if you're only going to be here for say 6 years but one of your kids is like in an age where they may end up being behind if you leave, like is there something you would like there where you would say do the Danish track of focal school unless this is the case?
I think it depends like also how certain you are. Because I think some people might say, we're going to stay for 2-3 years and then they end up staying for 6 and then they're like, ooh, we really should have done the Danish
it's so hard
system.
to know. Like there's so many other factors.
We came on a 2-week business trip in 2016 and we're still here.
We accidentally moved here. We were just like waiting it out, visiting family, and then we're like, I guess
people have that story.
Life is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it also it depends on your kids.
Yeah.
Like you know your kids and like how well they're going to be able to adapt to change and how easily they can make friends and how much support are they going to need. That's something that I would definitely ask schools directly about if you're considering them. If you know, for example, your kid has a diagnosis of some sort or you suspect a learning disability or some other kind of diagnosis, I would definitely ask the school directly what kind of supports they have because they'll probably be able to say like, yes, we can support with that or no. And that's going to, your child having the right amount of support is going to have a big impact on how well they're able to then adapt to other places. Because I almost feel like if they're on track in one system, they're probably going to be fine, even if it's not exactly the same in another system. But approximately, I feel like they would be able to adapt if they're
It's so
doing
tricky
okay
to
in one.
navigate that as a parent who you don't speak Danish very well or at all.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to understand like what the school's like vision is or, you know, like from that
the
and then
philosophy, I
and
guess,
philosophy.
yeah.
And then
Yeah.
like once you're in, you know, like I'm okay at Danish, but when I'm sitting in these 2-hour parent meetings to discuss these like bigger details, I'm like, I care about my kid, I swear, but I like don't, you know, there's like, I got the gist, you know, like there's been some playground updates, like, and here's how what we're eating. And I mean, they are younger but that will change when they get older and there's more serious topics that I might be missing because you know, I'm like, you know, missing a key word of something. And then I'm sitting on this little chair in a hot room being like, so I think it's really tricky. And I've actually heard some people that have multiple kids, they have put them in different like situations where they're maybe not all in the same school. It would seem like, oh, I wouldn't shoot, but like maybe one is like they're older, a little bit older, and like one makes sense to go to the international school because of their needs, and then the others are in Danish school. I mean,
I will say my perception is that it is easier probably to go from a Danish school to an international school than if you've been in an international school for a long time to then go to the Danish school. Also because of the language barrier. But like the international schools are going to be more equipped to kind of take people from different backgrounds and integrate them. They're used to it. And particularly international schools in Denmark, we get kids that are coming from Danish schools and might have limited English and we can support with that. And the Danish schools, I think it depends on the school, how well they're going to be able to support somebody coming from an international environment and who has maybe limited Danish because of that. So I would probably generally say, if you're really torn, I would probably say start Danish. But it depends. It's really hard to say.
Yeah.
But I would lean that way and say it's probably easier to then transition. Or maybe you are waiting for a spot at the international school you really want. Put them in the Danish school in the meantime, and then if you get the spot, you can decide if you want to take it. You know, but there are so many things to consider, and it's definitely not like a prescriptive like if this then that. You know what I mean?
It's just the family and the child and take everything into consideration.
Yeah.
Now, look because I taught high school in the U.S., so I wasn't at the grade level, but I sat in on a lot of these teacher in services and things like that, and reading and writing. Now, because one thing I hear a lot, especially in comments when schools are brought up here, especially from Danes, is the idea of like, oh, we just let kids play, we just let kids be kids, and I understand that, but it almost implies that everything is just like hard academic rigor and nothing else happens. You know, I don't think that that's the case in the U.S. In the U.S. or in other countries, you know, whether we're talking about the British system or others. But I do think part of why that happens at, you know, kindergarten, first grade, et cetera, is the push for early intervention. So trying to identify learning disabilities or uniqueness in how somebody's learning how to read, for example. Do you feel like that's a difference that should be considered, or how would somebody maybe want to navigate that when things may be a little bit different?
That's a good question. I will say I think the Danish approach to like early childhood and lower primary school is very healthy. I like that they focus on the whole child, and it is actually really important that kids build their like gross and fine motor skills outside by being active, and they have to work on social skills. Like those things are so important in order to be successful at academics.
There's an I was at an amusement park over the weekend where one of the rides is literally just like a jungle, like a very extensive like you know series of it's almost like an army like you know series of things you climb and go under and all these things, and I didn't. Like my kids are in sandals, not even wearing like proper equipment. They are just flying through these things.
They're fine.
And I am so impressed with them. And I'm the one that's like, oh my God, like I'm gonna like, cause I didn't like, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago and like, and we had like, I think like a tree and like a log that we went on and like a little forest.
The Chicago tree.
Yeah. I mean, we were in like the burbs, but I realized that I didn't develop those kind of those motor skills and like just, you know, they're like sharpening sticks with like real knives and just like, I'm like, oh my God. And I'm scared of it. And they're not.
My son is like a daredevil too. He's 4 and fearless on a bike. But also when I was teaching kindergarten in the U.S., there would be
also
kids
better
that,
biking than me.
Yeah.
They can all put their right foot down on the curb, and I cannot.
I'm learning to do that now.
I cannot.
But the kindergartners, like, they could not sit still in a chair. They could not hold a pencil. And those are literally because they don't have the core strength to, like, sit up and sit still.
Wow.
Or they don't have the fine motor strength to hold, or fine motor skills to, like, hold the pencil correctly. So those are things that, like, actually are productive for them to be doing things outside of the classroom in order to be successful in. So I actually think the Danish Nordic approach is very healthy, and it takes longer for them to then get the academic skills, but I don't think it's a problem.
And kids make it. I mean, kids are resilient, and I think we forget. Like they get there because they're going to,
and they're all at least bilingual,
right? and they get there. Again, I'm not speaking on data, but they get there in a way because they want to, right? So
they're
it's
like intrinsically motivated.
So I don't know. I wasn't saying that because I think one way is better than the other, but I do think there's value in, what makes it easier to learn how to read when you've also learned how to behave and sit in a seat.
Having taught in a very rigorous school environment in the U.S. where, like, kindergartners, not by my choice, they had to take tests like every 3 weeks, and like they had test anxiety in kindergarten, and I hated that. But it wasn't my choice, and you see them like getting broken down already from such a young age, and I don't see that here. The kids are so confident and like willing to take risks, and okay if they make a mistake, and so. Now, those are two extremes. I'm not saying that all American schools are like the ones that I taught at, not at all. But of those two extremes, I would rather a kid be carefree and curious and able to take risks, and like they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
They'll be
and
fine.
I get it. Like, it's for they're being tested to, identify where they need extra support. But
if they're not doing those things yet, they don't need the support.
It may be they're I don't say a late bloomer, but it may be that like they're not interested in their alphabet right now, and next year they will be.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe they need a different approach or a different teacher or a different whatever. Yeah.
And
maybe
it can
they just
put
need to
them
be
off.
older.
Yeah, and if they're turned off by it early, then that's
Totally.
hard. That's a lot harder to make up.
That's hard to undo. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
I'm curious, like, for both of you guys, how your being with a Danish partner, how that influenced the decisions that you've made as far as schooling.
I think for me and my husband, who is Danish, we have such a solid foundation. Thankfully, we were together 10 years before having kids. I'm very grateful also that like he's a chill Dane, like very even.
So chill.
Even he is, and so when we went through that, we together were like evaluating should they go to an international school, should they go to so we kind of made those decisions together, and it is a bit unfair because he has to do a bit more of the workload. He is in Aula, in the kid app, the one responding to all the messages. And I'm like reading it and I kind of know what's going on, but he's the one who puts the stuff in the calendar in case I miss it. And I'm very grateful for that. I realize that's not every situation, but I think we make a lot of those decisions together. And because we have a solid foundation, I think it's very hard if you have like very different roles where it's like the one person has to do all of the decision making.
Yeah.
What about you?
We didn't ever really entertain the idea of putting our kids in international school, even though I teach at one, because we plan to be here long term. And I think my perspective being in the international school is like, I love my school. I love my colleagues. They're amazing teachers. I love the program that I teach, but I don't think that it's necessary if you're staying in Denmark. And so I think some schools are like better than others in the public system, but I also, even though I teach at a private school, I'm like a huge proponent of public schools. And so my feeling is let's do the public schools. And if it doesn't work, we try something else. But my first choice would always be public school, neighborhood school, integrate as much as possible and just like be part of like that, like the fabric of Danish society in that way. And I want my kids to feel Danish, and they'll learn English. We work on it at home. And that's the only thing for me is like we need to make sure that they're getting enough English outside of school. But
yeah, there is a difference, right? Because your kid responds to you in Danish, and mine, I don't think they
maybe
ever
we do
went
another
through...
episode about bilingual kids.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
We should.
Yeah,
and like what shapes that, because it's so different, especially if there's maybe 3 languages in the household, where there's, you maybe the couple speaks in English and then they're from different places, but then there's the kid goes to Danish school.
A lot of things to consider.
Yeah, so much to consider. One more.
If you could design a hybrid Danish international school with the best parts of both, what would it look like?
Gosh, that's a great question. I mean, for sure, the Danish early childhood approach. And I will say, I think a lot of schools in the U.S. or like preschools in the U.S. like also do that, but it's very universal here, and I love that. What would I take from the U.S.?
Or just from the international area?
I really like having our like inquiry-based approach, and also there might be a lot of Danish schools that do that, but that's something that's like very central core to what we do. Inquiry-led, student-centered learning. We're not just like doing like lectures, blah, blah, blah. And it's very like differentiated, trying to meet different students where they're at so that they're genuinely interested in what we're learning. So I think that is
we didn't even cover the fact that I don't know, in international schools, do the teachers go by their first names like they do in the Danish schools?
Actually, well, it depends. Like we all do different things.
It's really interesting because it's like it doesn't put that like division barrier between.
I have so many thoughts on that, Brooke, and we're gonna have to probably do another episode.
Okay.
Well, we'll end on a cliffhanger. Yeah. Yeah, but thanks for helping us and sort of navigate this idea. I feel
like we're gonna need a part two. I want some comments. I want some people to be like, okay, but what about this particular? I'm sure we're missing a lot.
I feel like we're like, I don't know. You
I also need to like,
for you.
I need to also like find out more about what's actually happening in my own kid's school. Like,
that's the reflection from today.
That is the reflection. Is like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Well, we all have some homework, except for me, because I don't have kids.
But look at you.
You're an ally.
Yeah, I'm an ally. Ilana, thank you so much for helping us out. And this is a great conversation. And thanks you all for listening and watching.
Thanks.
Hi.
Hi.